Thank you.
Bristol students are identified as requiring special education programming. This enrollment reflects 22.58% of the total BPS student population. As of March 1st, 122 students with disabilities required out-of-district placements at private special education schools. There were 89 students requiring special education programming at other public schools that would include magnet schools. During the month of February 2025, 39% of the newly registered students were identified as requiring special education at the time of registration. 2 of the newly enrolled students required programming at out-of-district private school placements. And lastly, during the month of February, there were 36 211 and 8 911 calls. Are there any questions?
No questions? Thank you very much. Okay, item number 3, public comment. Do we have anyone signed up?
No.
None signed up, any online?
No, I don't, hold on.
Okay.
No, I don't see anyone raising their hand.
2025 budget update to 2/28/25.
Fiscal year 25 balance on February 28th was negative $7,568,619. We received our first installment of the excess bus grant. However, our transportation and pupil personnel services, operation and maintenance of plant characters remain the most significant areas of concern. The transportation budget is currently over budget by $369,573 due to increases in contractual obligations. Pupil services is over budget by $7,631,970, and operation of maintenance and plant are over by $367,313 and $147,557 respectively at the end of February. The 3 water main issues and breaks and school plumbing issues are driving these overages. We maintain a budget freeze, are only allowing purchases directly supporting your curriculum, necessary paper products, emergency repairs, and all grant and student activity purchases. We are actively identifying areas where we can reduce encumbrances for goods and services. Currently, there are 853 purchase orders that remain open. We'll continue to work to close the POs that are not explicitly related to curriculum, repairs, or needed supplies. I'll closely monitor fiscal year 2025 costs and continue to inform you of all areas of concern in the following months.
Yes, if I may. I had a question for you with regard to transportation expenses, particularly where it involves transportation for students from their home school, from the home school to things for some of those other programs. How many students are being bused that are only taking, let's say, 1 or 2 classes?
Those are the high school students, and
Yeah.
those are shuttle buses.
Yeah.
And the number of students, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but the shuttle buses run and they're part of the tiers. So it's not a lot of additional costs.
Okay. Approximately how many students are taking that transportation?
78 for high school.
78 for high school, thank you. 78 for high school.
Okay, okay. All right.
It's not something I know off the top of my head, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, thank
You're welcome.
With respect to transportation, I think we've known for a while that we were going to be opening that line due to an increase that we basically got post budget.
Correct.
We've been talking about it for a while. Have we looked at where we think we might end at either end, knowing what the rates are? Because right now we've got almost 400,000 over, and in our general fund operating budget, we've got only 2 million excess, right? And so that's balancing against what we have down here is a $7.6 million deficit, right? So right now, $7.5 million total deficit, we only got $2.2 million in additional outstanding revenue that we expect. And so we could go all the way down, be negative $5.5 million, or we can trend closer to $6 million. And so I guess
I anticipate getting, between 1.9 and 2.7 more excess cost dollars this year in May,
yeah,
which will reduce the special ed expenditures. And also many of the, purchase orders that are out there can be reduced or brought down, where we're just trying to get a hold of it
no,
and find things that are actually necessary and things that are not.
I totally understand. I think just the point that I'm trying to make is that there's basically not a lot of room left.
No.
And historically, if we looked at from 2022 on, right, we were able to try out and balance out our budget because we weren't spending in our general fund and we kept freezing at the start of every school year, right? So I just kind of, we've got a broad audience today. We also have a very important topic to discuss later on. And so I think the picture has to be made clear is that we're discussing other things because of what we're looking at today versus what we've been receiving in our revenue. The only other thing I wanted to take a look at, I'm losing my place. Oh, item 6, benefits and fixed, right? We've got about 1.7 million in that line, but we expect to utilize that. almost
100% of it.
Okay, so that's sort of where I'm getting at, is that there's some shrinkage to get to that 7.5, right? But you said we've got 1.9 to 2.7 in a range, but we also have to spend out another 1.7 million dollars. So that what's left really is basically nothing.
Pretty much.
Okay, and last question, do we know today, I think we presented on it previously, but what our excess cost reimbursement is, dollar for dollar? It was 69 cents on the dollar the last time we talked.
It was 64.8, and we are now getting 78.2.
Okay, so that's a lot better than.
And we'll get it in the second installment, so
Okay.
it will be a good chunk.
Is that why we got to the end range of about 2.7 versus 1.9, 2.2?
Hmm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question, actually, and this is me, actually, this is maybe a question more for Iris than it is for Lynn. And this is me just kind of like spitballing, as far as those students that are taking those, those classes from high school to James. Is there any feasibility in us being able to use the fast track instead of using, using public transportation as opposed to using buses? Is that something that would be feasible, and they get set up routes for the students?
You mean Connecticut Transportation?
Yes. That might be a question more for Iris than you. but-
I honestly don't know if
Yeah.
the buses run from there, from the school, the high schools to Baines in the same
I'm sure if you had a conversation, maybe,
time frames.
just.
I have no idea how much a bus costs per pupil, because I don't know how much a Connecticut Transportation bus costs.
Yeah, well, and that's taxpayer funded, so, already, for the fast track.
You still have to pay for it.
Well,
Every ride.
yeah, but, if it's already, we have to pay for the buses too, so.
Mhm.
If the state, if it's being paid through state taxes, I don't see why we shouldn't look into that. And at least explore an option of when you're reducing our overhead.
Depending on
It could be very tricky having children under the age of 18 riding buses without adults on them. With
Well, if you
them.
had like a school chaperone,
That would be a position we'd have to pay for.
well. But like I said, it's something I think we should be looking. There's gotta be, like I said, we gotta be looking at some efficiencies here.
Yeah, I think the chair noted that. I think to the commissioner's point, right? Tonight, we're looking through a variety of potential savings that we can embark on, obviously, with what was just mentioned, right? You have liability insurance that you have to think about with putting children on a public bus. You have other, staff liability, all those types of things. And so I think what I appreciate is obviously the creativity that people want to bring to this discussion, but we certainly could look at that for another fiscal year. But I think what we have right in front of us tonight is the stuff that we need to be exploring and looking at, because we have a presentation due Tuesday, next Wednesday, and so we need to approve a budget.
Do you want me to go on? There's the cafeteria report and,
We didn't move that item up, so unfortunately I sandwiched between budget cuts.
okay,
Number 5.
The top, or- I can do mine. I'm pretty quick.
Why don't you
All right.
say what you'd like to say?
So item number 5 is suggested budget cuts for the upcoming budget. The superintendent and board spent 2 workshops reviewing the proposed superintendent's budget, which was around $16 million proposed increase of almost 13%. We got some feedback from folks on the city side that basically wouldn't be an acceptable request on their end. And so what the chair of the board had asked me to do, and I know that I, as a member of the finance committee, had asked the folks at central office to do, was to review areas in which we, either 1, create efficiency, or 2, have no choice but to cut, because money is finite and we don't get to raise it on revenue. And so, if I understand the process, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, central office folks held few meetings to review areas in which cut. They provided us with a list of those areas. They included both positions and other line items. There were follow-up questions with respect to those specific cuts and line item cuts. We also received a long list. It looks like this in tiny print with the rationale of those cuts, but we have them on the computer so we're able to see. We also have a budget cut rationale. There are several cuts that are listed on here. I don't know if we should probably want to do this between the 4 of us, but we can go line by line. We can have sort of percent budget rationale and have a discussion. Okay, so all right, why don't you go over the budget rationale?
the cuts that we presented tonight focus on aligning expenditure with prior year spending, shifting certain costs to grants, and reducing non-essential expenses. Notably, the cuts are designed to preserve core educational functions, demonstrating our unwavering commitment to providing the students and families of Bristol with a quality education. Would you like me to generalize or go line by line?
I think we want to start with non-positions, so the cuts that are not to positions.
We have put in program and staff stipend reductions. Professional development has been reduced to 15,000. Supervisor salaries, elementary only, were reduced by 9,152 and shifted to Alliance. That's for summer school. Library media salaries, it's a before and after school at high school program was cut. That was 3,000 at each high school. Co-curricular stipends for various programs, art, theater, wellness, TESOL, were reduced or eliminated unless they are in the teacher's contract. Professional education services in music, theater, and art are cut to previous levels. Software licenses have been reduced by 22,000, a decision made after careful evaluation of usage and the necessity to optimize the budget. Overtime in technology was cut by $2,500. In our athletics and student activities, we cut the uniform lines for the high school and middle school by $56,274 and $1,800. Athletic memberships were reduced by $43,285. Student recognition across various departments was cut or reallocated. Middle and high school athletic recognition was cut by about $15,276. And a bus for bowling for only one high school was eliminated, saving $5,515. Arts and music reductions. The art budget was cut by $17,211, adjusted to match 23-24 levels. Music equipment and instructional supplies were significantly reduced down to previous levels. Theater and music professional development and stipends were cut.
What did you say that was?
Theater and music professional development and stipends were cut.
What, can you tell us an impact on that?
Let's go to the individual lines. There were professional services, in the two K-8 schools. And there was a very large amount of money put in for theater for, Green Hills and West Bristol, and they don't run a theater program. It was put in to attempt to start one, so we cut it out because it doesn't exist now.
Okay. And that's it
Mhm.
for theater.
That's, yes. Okay, transportation and field trips. Summer school transportation was cut by 25,000 and moved to a grant. And field trips across multiple schools were cut or reduced to a set amount per school. The facilities and maintenance, security repairs and maintenance was reduced by $15,000. Repairs and maintenance for multiple departments and schools were cut or shifted to other funding sources. And the vandalism fund was reduced by $14,000. Instructional and office supplies, we had textbook purchases that we cut across the district. Office and instructional supplies in schools and the central office were reduced or eliminated. Student planners were eliminated across all buildings. Administrative and miscellaneous reduction, the administrative supplies were cut for all the departments. Membership for staffs in various subjects were reduced or eliminated, and any additional new stipends were removed. That's the net effect of the 3-page document.
I just have a question about art and music. You said something about art and music. How did it impact art and music? Oh. I just want to understand the cuts to art and music.
There was equipment in art for kilns that were being replaced. That was done this year. We transferred the funds last month to do the kiln repairs, so we cut that out of next year's budget. And the theater, it was mostly rents and leases, repairs and maintenance for art, middle school and high school. No theater for Green Hills and West Bristol. Instructional supplies were cut for those lines, because they don't need them if they're not running the programs.
And then you said 56,000 in high school uniforms or all uniforms across the district?
All uniforms for next year for the 2 high schools and middle school were cut.
And so how will that impact? Do we have uniforms that they can wear or is this gonna?
They have uniforms that they're currently using. This is the replacement schedule. If we don't replace them, they'll just go out another year.
Okay. So how long have they not been replaced?
They're on a 5-year schedule.
For 5 years.
So next year's replacements would be the 5th year.
Cut in on that, sorry.
Only 56,000.
Well, I think you judged me, yeah, but, to your question about the way it cut uniforms on the budget last year, and I think the year before that.
I do too. So like,
Something.
because we did have people come and say that, like, band uniforms were falling apart and
They
things.
have band
We
uniforms
fixed the
this
band
year.
uniforms,
Okay,
but
okay.
the people who haven't come to
70,000.
complain yet could be coming if we're on year 7, if we postponed the others for 2 years. So I just wanna, pay attention to that.
The actual equipment lines for the high schools, they've gotten all the materials they needed this year. In fact, they're over budget because they've gotten more than they needed this year. Because there was an additional season of a sport that was added and they got uniforms for that. So that line is over budget.
I guess we have to see which uniforms are supposed to be bought next year and if they really are year 6 or if they're year 7 or if they're year 8. Before we decide. So like, if they want us to decide tonight, we'd have to If we were gonna cut it, I have to know that. For me to vote on that,
We have to look that up.
okay.
Through the chair.
Okay.
We just talked to the deduction and repairs and maintenance a little bit, because it looks like, I think you said this, and it looks like to me we've zeroed out every line on that. Can we talk to the realism of not doing repairs and maintenance on buildings that are incredibly old?
Through the chair?
Yeah.
Is your mic?
Talking into the mic and it's on?
It's on, okay,
Yeah.
because we're getting comments that what they can't hear you.
Do I?
I can hear you in the room, but
Oh, okay.
they're saying you're quiet
Um,
online.
I can almost keep the mic. Sorry, it might be scripted. Maybe it's just instruction that I see on here, but,
Those are instruction,
okay,
the repairs and maintenance for the buildings,
I'm not sure.
are in character 4.
Well, there is one equipment maintenance, $122,000. Line 6 billion. Page. I think it's the third or fourth page, these might be out of order.
Oh, no,
No, that's not.
they're all going to.
Bar, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Good page down?
Yep, in the middle, it's object, I could read the object code,
That would be great.
573005, equipment maintenance.
573005, that was to purchase a truck that we put off for another year.
Okay. To know,
It's not a roof falling in.
Nope, it's equipment.
Don't bring up Bruce. More questions?
I'm just perusing, sure I don't have any salary parts.
So we have cuts to vandalism, which we have no control over. Just hope the kids behave.
Oh, on the reserve for salary changes, that's noted that it's salary changes for retirees.
It's retirees and anyone who's resigned this year, and
Yeah.
we're replacing with a lower salaried person. So we're at 10 now, I think. So that's gonna take up that 100,000.
Everybody good?
I did have some other questions, if I may. So is this the final list? Is there, have any other cuts been considered outside of this, or just, that maybe, nobody was comfortable with what we had or considered?
This is a non-position list.
Okay. All right, have we considered that? Certain staffing positions, I know there are
Yes.
certain
Yeah, we can
positions
get that out.
that were funded by, that have been funded by grants. No, it's not,
I don't think we got to that yet.
okay. All right, we are going,
Yeah.
okay,
Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
Questions on these items?
Let's get rid of the staff.
In the staffing spreadsheet, which is the colorful one, you see there's
Yeah.
12 non-bargaining kindergarten teaching assistants that are currently in the Alliance grant that previously were in ESSER ARP. It's a cut of $347,792. 4 PE teachers at the high school. It's a cut of $262,920. Half of my secretary, $36,360. Supervisor of climate and culture, $164,689. A theme coach, $65,730. A half of an art teacher, $32,865. A half of a music teacher, $32,865. Science instructional leaders, elementary level, $4,076. Library media specialist at the high school, 2, $131,460. 6 to 8 instructional support, Green Hills, $109,153. 4 high school teachers, $262,920. 2 from each school. 1 6-8 coach from the K-8 schools, $65,730. Cut 5 middle school curriculum coordinators to have 1 per course per grade level, $7,727. 1 6 to 8 library media specialist from Greenhouse West Bristol, $65,730. Move 2 administrators to 11 months, savings of $30,000. And supervisor of high school facilities, $92,168. The total with benefits of these cuts is $2,157,544. We used master's step 4, $65,730 as the value for each teacher being reduced. And $582 for the leaders in elementary support.
You want me to go first? Okay. So when I looked at the list that was presented to us, I saw a lot of positions that actually impact students directly. So 12 kindergarten assistants that are, in my experience as a parent and an educator, dealing with our most vulnerable youngest students who are coming in. They were born during COVID, right? They may have English as a second language. They may have not been identified by birth to 3 on what needs that they have. And I'm absolutely just not interested in cutting positions that work directly with students.
I love that you really talk about, making sure that we're maintaining any position that directly touches a student. In some of what you'll hear tonight, any of the position cuts, we really did vet it with the mindset that no staff loses their position and that students still have access to what they need. So with the 12 KTAs, again, we were looking at the fact that they weren't budgeted for previously, they were part of an ESSER grant. However, when you reduce those positions, they do have the ability to take on a para-educator position, which we do have available, and they're able to still work with kindergarten students. And part of their responsibilities will change a bit to include things like the diapering and toileting that we do have in the para contract. KTAs don't respond to that. So in our mind, we were keeping the same staff. It was just reallocating KTAs to become paras to still support the students.
But when I look at the pre-COVID para situation in kindergarten classrooms, we didn't have a para per kindergarten classroom.
They did not.
No.
So in our redesign, we would be purposefully assigning para educators rather than KTAs in those areas because we do see the benefit of having.
But that's more costly.
It's the same number of paras that we have. So of the 225 paras that we'll have next year, they would assume some of those positions. We have many positions open at this time that are not filled. Our KTAs can take those positions up to the 225.
How many positions are open?
I'd have to get you the number, but it's actually well over the 12.
15, I think.
That
Have we
was our
done any,
estimate.
have we done any? Speaking to the kindergarten teachers about how this would impact their ability and what is our class size and how this will change things. I mean, it's hard to just eliminate 12 positions that are direct service positions, and the cost of those 12 positions are not super high cost and they're pretty impactful. So I think with just seeing what we've been provided, it's hard to make a decision to remove those positions. I think we would need more information.
Yeah, I can only speak to the conversations that I've had. I'm not sure if there's been, additional conversations. Because again, these last minute changes came up within the last week. But I do know in speaking with kindergarten teachers, they really do value the additional support within the room.
I
They
know.
really are a side by side teacher, and I think as a educator group here, we value that service that they're providing. And so again, when we were asked to reduce the budget, it was kind of, we could reduce the budget while reallocating, keeping students still at the center and keeping staff with their jobs.
Right, and so I guess that leads to my next, so I look at, taking away physical education teachers because we don't have to give as many credits, but with obesity and activity being so necessary, ADHD, I mean, like movement, I just can't imagine removing things like that, and so the list that we were given, I can understand that there might be a plan in place, but we were asked by the Board of Finance to look at the things that are nice to do, but that aren't required. And we're also elected to make sure that we meet the needs of every student in the district. And I see the physical activity, I see supports in kindergarten, I see those types of things as non-negotiables. I just don't see them as things that I could even consider removing from our student body. And I don't see a lot of things on here that are nice to do, but not necessary, and that don't directly touch kids. So we did ask for more information because we know that there are a lot of positions that are full-time positions that aren't necessarily working directly with students. And I think that's really where we're looking more to have the conversation.
So I'm not sure that I'm the person, to present that. However, I can say that we did talk about really a number of positions, again, with that same framework in mind. One of the things I think that's important is that, say we do look at coaches, I know coaches in particular were one of the areas looked at. We also have to remember that contractually, if they were eliminated, they then bump teacher positions. And we could then be losing all of our early teachers at a double rate, so it would be the equivalent of 24 brand new teachers. Hence why we didn't look at that, we looked at a different model to maintain all of the staffing.
So if I may, however, I don't want to misspeak, but, or take over your.
No, please.
But when I look at this, right, I see one bargaining unit disproportionately being impacted against other bargaining units, and I've got 13 BFT, one BAPS, one 3551, one 818, right? And so I think, when we had asked for the coaches to be considered, which was about 20 folks, there's still a savings involved in eliminating the coaching positions. If you take, I think what did I do? I mean, we have the Excel sheet. It's 56 and change, which is what the real savings you would get if all of those coaches, if all of them decide to go back in the classroom. Some of them may just decide to move on. We don't know what their decision making would be. That's another about $1 million in change in savings.
We'll also have all the people that are laid off, we have to pay the unemployment insurance. I'll have to increase the unemployment line exponentially.
Do we
But
not
we
have to
also
do the
have
same for
vacancies.
4 BFT folks who what about the 4 PE teachers on here? The one BAPS person, the theme coach?
It's a much greater dollar amount.
Well, I think we would need that because ultimately we may be back at this table even looking at this list again, but what I'm trying to say is that there's still an ability to have savings without impacting your teachers. And that's what I think we really need to look at.
I don't know if I don't know if you would like me to give a
You're welcome.
perspective or not. I'm not sure of the format here. But I could speak to a little bit about, Commissioner Hans, you mentioned what's required, and I think that was one of the reasons why we did look at physical education. It is very uncommon at the high school level to require 2 credits of physical education in addition to a health credit. So I think it's important for the board's understanding is that students would have a consistent semester of either health or physical education throughout their entire 4 years. And I think that makes a lot of sense for students. It offers greater opportunities within their 8-period day to explore other electives. Right now, what the students are getting is 2 credits, so a semester of PE and 2 semesters of health. So it is more than what's required by the state. It's more than what other surrounding towns are requiring. It does maintain physical fitness and health education in a way that's consistent across the student's educational career. It is not a popular course, if I'm being honest, and it probably speaks to what you're talking about, some of our physical fitness in general. And it is one of our courses that is most often failed, requiring additional credits in recovery on top of that, even in summer school. So if we provide the minimum requirement for students, as is expected across the state, it might more positively impact students' progression across their high school career. I don't know if you'd like a perspective on coaches, but I think if that would be useful for the committee and decision-making, I can provide that.
Talking about it, so.
Okay. So I think as we're talking about direct impact on students, coaching has been a part of the Bristol Public Schools institution since before 2000. I think our first coaches at the literacy were hired in 1998. It has been a structure that has allowed us to have the greatest impact on literacy achievement and math achievement over the past 25 years. And the reason why the first investments that were made in supporting literacy were made for coaches is because they impact tier 1 instruction. They have the broadest impact. When we're talking about what the coach's work is, they're co-teaching with teachers, they're modeling in classrooms, they're providing small group instruction, they're pulling groups of students as necessary when students are underachieving. When you have a position that's broadly defined like that, we have the flexibility to be able to impact a greater number of students. I know there were some questions about the difference between a coach and instructional support. Instructional support teachers were added later after having that base support of impacting all students when we were receiving Title I schools. So when we look at around 1998, 2000, we were not a fully Title I district at the time. And so the investment by the board at that time was really to look at how can we broadly improve student achievement by the minimum introduction of new positions, hence our coaches. Instructional support, as you noticed in some of the documentation that was requested, is funded under Title I. And Title I requires that we provide additional instructional support to students who are impoverished. And the amount of support that's given is based on the number of students who are in need in each building. When we look at instructional support, they do provide direct service, but the max that they could potentially service in a day in the models that we're currently using is somewhere between 47 students a day, give or take about 10 students, depending on the day and the model that the school is using. That's not enough for the number of students that we have in need. We need a base of support. So these two positions really go hand in hand. There's like, I don't know, breathing hard or what. And I think another, so to just point this, like to give you some actual data, you know, I'm a data person. I like to look at what the impact is. Yeah, help. As we look at what that impact is, I think one way that we could really look at the impact of coaches is that we've made a concerted effort in math coaches since 2018. In 2018, we had 2 math coaches and we are now up to 10 coaches. This was an investment on former Board of Education's parts to really look at our math achievement and think about how could we more positively influence outcomes in that area. We do have limited instructional support for mathematics. At the elementary level, we only have 1 school that has an instructional support teacher for mathematics, and 2 of our, I think it's 2 off the top of my head, middle schools have part-time instructional support.
Wait, Carly, can I ask you a question about that? So you're saying, I thought we had 12.5 math ISTs.
I would have to look. I don't know that it's up to that number. I don't have that broken down in front of me. Right now, the greater investment is in literacy than in math. Karen, well, I don't want to mention any names because we're in a public meeting, but I'm aware of, without looking at it, I don't want to speak to it. That's not And it's not right. Just, I had an error earlier today and that. It's not mine, and that was an error of mine. So, okay, so for mathematics, to look at mathematics. So since 2018, we've had rising achievement in mathematics in most of our grades year over year. That is not where we've had an investment in math instructional support teachers. It is primarily the work of our coaches. In fact, both for grades 3 through 5 and 6 through 8, when we look at state average proficiency rates in mathematics across all 3 grades, the state average is declining. Performance is going down. In Bristol, that's not the case. Our achievement is rising. The percent of students who are proficient and advanced in mathematics has gone up in at least 3 of our grades and is maintaining in others. I think, and especially, I know we have limited math instructional support. The middle level, that's actually where we're seeing that year over year gain. I only am bringing up that as a way of highlighting because it does allow us an opportunity to explore what's the impact of direct instructional support through tier 2. I know that's EduSpeak, but for us, that's more intensive one-on-one or one-to-small group support that an IST can provide as compared to providing the overall support coaching. I'm bringing all of that up because as I'm from my position as chief of academics and if I'm being asked to make recommendations, I certainly want to ensure that everything that we put forward allows our students to meet that vision that we have for them, that they will graduate with the knowledge, skills, dispositions that they need to be self-sufficient and to make a meaningful difference in our rapidly changing global community. The changes that were just shared by Ms. Bovair were changes that allow us to continue that because we have other individuals who could provide that level of support. I do feel that given looking at our student achievement over time and looking at the way in which we have invested in the past and that positive outcomes we're seeing, that we could be looking at an impact to literacy and numeracy with the reduction of those positions.
I just found your chart on math ISTs. We have 5.
Right.
So we have 20 literacy ISTs, and from what I read, our instructional support teachers do direct service and also can coach based on their job descriptions. I don't know if that's what's happening, but that is in the functional job description. Where-
One particular one that was written under Title I. You might have noticed in the job descriptions that there's an intensive instructional support teacher. That was written in the past because instructional teachers could not coach. However, with Title I funds, there was a principal who wanted greater opportunity to use that position as a coach as well. And so they're not called an instructional support teacher. It would be hard to see in Munis, it's not labeled that way, but there's a job description called an intensive instructional support teacher, and that allows some coaching to be a part of that position.
But the actual job description that we received just for ISTs says coaching, so I don't know that that's incorrect but it says it in it.
I would say the reverse. Our coaches generally can provide because they have a more broader description than instructional support. I also think, just for the awareness of the board and looking at the funding source, it's going to take a little bit more studying in that. Title I, as you know, this year was impacted. It was reduced quite substantially. All of our instructional support teachers, not all, the majority of our instructional support teachers are funded under Title I. Title I requires that all local and state funds be allocated equitably across all of our schools, elementary and middle. Any grade, right now, all of our Title I schools that serve students in grades K through 8. So that would be all of our elementary and middle schools and our K-8s. When there are adjustments that are made, it would be very difficult to cut a position out of Title I and move it back into state and local funding that could pose some issues. So I think in terms of job descriptions, what people are doing, who they're working for, when you're looking at Title I, there's some very specific rules around
And
that.
that's more of the ISTs.
That's
not
more of the
coaches.
IST role.
Yeah, and then when I read the functional job description for the coach, it doesn't include direct service. So again, these are things that when you look at our bylaws and when we change job descriptions, it's important to have us vote on those things and make sure that they're done correctly, because all we can go by is what we have, and so I may be a parent and be able to speak to some coaches and hear, oh no, we can do some modeling in the classroom and we're actually in front of kids at times. But then when I look at the functional job description, it doesn't require any direct service with students versus the ISD where it says mainly direct service with students and some coaching, but it doesn't give us any kind of like, what is the percentage of time on both? And I hear you say 47 students is on average what an IST would serve a week in
day.
a day, okay, and so,
And it's the same students every day for the week.
so. the
47 students total.
So 47 students receive direct support daily, 5 days a week?
Yes. Give or take. Now, that's why I really appreciate the opportunity to come to speak, because I know you're talking about direct service as being impactful. When we're looking at the impact of roles, we can see that we have rising achievement, even in math, where we have very little math instructional support. So I don't want to, let me say it this way, I appreciate the opportunity to look at what could potentially be impacting student achievement more broadly than one-on-one service. One of the reasons why we did invest in math and coaching instead of math instructional support at the middle level more fully, right? We would have choices as we were adding math coaches, we could have considered to add math instructional support. One of the reasons why we did not do that is our research at the time had shown that we were not seeing great gains with one-on-one direct support with the way in which that model was working at the time. And thus, we decided to move to math coaching as a model so that we can more broadly impact. I think it's important, and I appreciate the opportunities to speak to what are the outcomes for student learning and what's impacting that beyond the service delivery model.
So I just want to say that I think that the idea that coaches don't have an impact is crazy. Obviously, we know that any of these supports are going to have an impact, right? And so we're not trying to at all minimize the work of professionals who are doing, great things for teachers, which is really great, but we're in this huge deficit right now, right? So we're being asked to say, where do we absolutely need to keep funding? And I look at how many positions were added since COVID, right? So pre-COVID, we had 10, 11 literacy coaches in 2018. And we didn't go back further than that. So I know you say that this started a long time. I don't know if we had 1 or 2 or if we had 10. I really, that's not something that's been provided to us. Now we have 20. So we upped it, and we almost doubled it post-COVID, right? So that's something that I don't know that our budget can handle. Then we have ISTs were at 18 prior to COVID. We went up to 36 in the height of COVID. And now we're back down to 24 or 25 to 24. And so looking at the growth in those areas, right? I mean, it's hard because we don't have the finances. And then when you look at Title I and direct services, we're gonna have to look at that as well with the funding source not being able to change. I also just wanna say that a lot of the gains that we're getting also, not to minimize the work the coaches are doing, because I'm positive there's an impact, but the teachers are also making.
Correct. If you can't link a one-to-one, I will say, I think the investments prior to were really focused on, as you mentioned, coming out of the pandemic. Bristol was noted multiple times, even by the state of Connecticut, as being one of the few districts who were able to come back on a positive note after the recovery. So I do think, again, the decisions that were made in the past to really support the academic achievement and growth of our students in literacy and math have shown that they've had a positive impact. And certainly it's our teachers, it's our school leadership. All of these decisions are hard. So again, I think just to restate, and I don't know if you have other questions for me, so you can certainly call me back up, but I think some of the other recommendations, we're really looking at what is currently being offered and how could we look at a way to more strategically offer that in a way that wouldn't impact students' literacy and numeracy.
If you can move along on this, because we are going to be running out of time.
I do
Thank you,
apologize.
Charlie.
I did have some other things that I wanted to bring up or discuss. Things that I think, you know, again, getting back to that nice to have, but maybe not necessarily, or things that either, services that, you know, that we need to keep the, operations going, but maybe necessarily can look at, you know, like outsourcing or moving those other blocks. One of them would be IT. I know that we had, there's been discussions in the past about, converging, the school's IT department with the city of Bristol's. I know it's been a discussion point. Field maintenance, that would be this, you know, fall into the same thing that have parks, take over, the service of
Parks
that.
has taken over the services for all but the high school.
I'm sorry?
Parks has taken over our field services for all but the high school. But they took over the services, they don't pay for the grass, they don't pay for the sod, they don't pay for the clay, they don't pay for anything but taking care of the services with the machines. So we're still funding all those, that's why that line still exists.
All right, but I was.
Making sure it's still unmuted.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll get a little closer about that. Yeah, so it was my understanding that we were only doing it for the things. You're telling me now that we're doing it for all the schools with the exception of high schools?
The two high schools have a service contract with the company.
Okay,
Other than that, I would have to get back to you to tell you what the rest of them are, but I know we
Okay.
do pay for all of the supplies that go into.
well, could we not have the high school's contract with the city?
It's not turf, it's turf. It has to be done by a special machine that has to be, and it gets vacuumed and
Okay,
it's very labor intensive and not cheap.
okay, what about IT?
IT, we are working with Eric, the CIO at
Okay.
the city, and we have been partnering with them in every way possible to save money.
Okay, all right, that's good. And one that I think, again, this is, something that, I feel it is a nice to have, but maybe not necessary. Or maybe things that we could like, look at, like with the redistricting, and that would be Edgewood. We have the pre-Ks, I'm all for them, but do we need a school, a building, solely for that purpose? Would we not, like, once with redistricting, be able to redistrict pre-K and instead of having a K 5 model, having a pre-K 5 model? Is that something that,
That's
maybe
something,
that's a question for Iris, is that something?
Did we get a grant
That could
for
be
that?
considered.
Did we get a grant for the preschool building that we?
we did get a grant from the state of Connecticut for about approximately $16 million to
Yeah.
replace the roof and mechanicals.
No, but to take the money, don't we have to operate for 5 years? Isn't there a number of
Yes.
years? Yeah,
Yes.
so if, once we voted we had this vote, I don't know if the money board when it happened, but it wasn't very long ago. Where we decided to
2024,
2023 or 2.
24 was when it was pushed forward with the state and then it was approved.
But we voted to
In
keep the
September.
building the year that Commissioner Tagliello was voted on to the board. And we had these discussions and we talked about possibly closing the building. There was a real push from members of the board and the superintendent at the time to have a preschool academy, not to have neighborhood schools. A lot of the reasons given were based on having the preschool teachers all in one place for PD back. There were reasons why, with research and data, that this was the model that Bristol thought would be best for our students. There was pushback, but there was a lot of conversation about it. Commissioner Tagliello was one of the strongest people who pushed back on it at the time. But we were trying to listen to all voices and hear what the community wanted, and they didn't want to close the building. And so the conversation led to this grant that we now have access to for reimbursing. We, out of the 16 million, we have 11 left. Did we already have some of those resources put into the building?
Some of the resources have gone into the building. We also, they did some different ways. They got some money from the city, they got some money from an HVAC grant.
So I think you have to be open for 5 years, you have to pay back the money,
And it has to start this summer or we'll lose the grant.
or you lose the grant. So we put ourselves in a position where we made some decisions. And it was a full board vote, and it was not driven by everyone. This was something that people really wanted, and now to turn around and say, let's just go back on that, it's a big decision, and it's gonna cost us more money than fixing the building.
All right, but it's also gonna cost us a lot of money to keep that building maintained, operated.
Well, the
Yeah.
operation, once the building is fixed, and we have $11 million in reimbursable money, so we just need to have the money come first, and then we can reimburse. The operational costs of the staff would be the same regardless of the building, so.
Correct, and the operational cost of the building, since the costs are specifically to that building, $49,900. That's the heat and the electricity and the gas.
Yeah, but I
The
guess
water
my
is
thought
paid for
process
the whole
is if we eliminated the pre-K program at Edgewood, if we funneled those children to other area schools, it would help with reducing transportation costs. You wouldn't have to worry about.
It would
having-
not
it would-
reduce
It
transportation
would reduce
costs.
that, in some ways it might, because parents would be more likely to drive their kids to school. Also, it would help with administrative costs and stuff like that, you're not heating and, you're not keeping another building operating, maintenance costs, all that other stuff goes away, so that's my thought process.
Through the chair.
I just.
Just one more thing, so we paid over $500,000 on schematic designs for HVACs, that didn't happen. Now you wanna spend millions of dollars that we received from grant money that we're gonna have to pay back on a building that we would never have use of if we don't go through with the plan that we voted on. So I honestly don't see this as an option at this point, but I'm one of 9.
So, sorry, just through the chairs, kind of want to round out the conversation because we're coming up to our next meeting. So, we heard a lot tonight, I appreciate, I do appreciate the history on, the coaching. I looked into the history of, public education in Connecticut, and, one of the first public acts that we had was in the late 1600s, where we mandated that children had a right to go to, have an education. And then we continued to iterate on that time and time again. I think, Ms. Wharton had an impassioned argument, and I think that she should go to another committee, which is called the Board of Finance, and she should go to the mayor's office and tell why we need more funding for those exact folks and why we continue, we need support in our budget, because there's going to be pain points regardless. And tonight we have 2 scenarios in front of us. One is a $5 million reduction scenario that gets you to $11 million increase. The other is a $6 million reduction scenario that gets you to $10 million. I don't know a time in which the city of Bristol has given the Board of Ed a $10 million increase. And so I think regardless of how we decide to make these cuts tonight, we are going to be back here. And I want, in my mind, I think staff needs to think, if we're not going to include coaches in this iteration, we're probably going to have to do it in the next iteration, because my belief is that when you reduce your workforce, you have to do it both strategically, but everybody has to feel the pain. That means administrators have to feel the pain. That means central office staff have to feel the pain. That means teachers have to feel the pain. Custodians have to feel the pain. Because if we don't do it that way, it looks very targeted, and we are going to have an uprising. Folks are not going to be pleased that their classroom size goes up when we eliminate teachers. Folks are not going to be happy that they don't have the direct supports that we're offering them if we eliminate coaches and ISD. So I appreciate the impassioned approach. We have a full board meeting starting now, and so I think we do need to continue to have this.
I don't want to move this along and continue on to item numbers. Yeah,
Yeah, all right. So I'll make a motion to table the remaining items on the agenda.
motion made to table. Give it a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, discussion, all in favor,
I motion to adjourn.
okay, cafeteria report.
No, we tabled it all.
Table them.
All done.
All right, good.
Meeting's adjourned.
Good.